Welcome to another episode of Peepella Pod. I want you to picture this for a second. The year is 2016. One of the biggest pop stars on the planet steps onto the stage at the Country Music Association Awards to perform a country song that she wrote.
Right, a huge moment.
Exactly. And she's not just up there alone, she's flanked by absolute country legends, the Dixie Chicks. And this performance, it ends up pulling the highest ratings in the entire history of the broadcast. So, you'd think the industry's response to this massive commercial triumph would be, I don't know, celebratory.
Yeah, you'd think so. But instead, their response was to just delete all evidence that it ever happened.
Literally. I mean, the Country Music Association deleted all their promotional posts about the performance from their social media, just scrubbed it. And the backlash from viewers, people claiming she didn't belong in the genre, it was immediate and it was incredibly intense.
And to really cap it all off, the Grammy Country Committee actually rejected the song from consideration entirely.
Yeah.
They claimed it simply, quote, wasn't country enough.
Wow. Which is just, I mean, that's wild.
It is. It's the absolute definition of institutional gatekeeping. It's a very clear, very public message saying to this artist, you are not welcome here, no matter how many viewers you bring to our stage.
And that tension, right, that highly public rejection, that is the foundation of today's deep dive. We are looking at Beyonce's 2024 landmark album, Cowboy Carter. But to be completely clear to you listening, this isn't just, an album review.
No, not at all.
Right. This is a story about what happens when an artist is told she doesn't belong in a space, and instead of just retreating or apologizing, she spends 5 years unearthing the erased history of that exact space to redefine it entirely.
And the stakes of this project, they are incredibly high. We are going to explore how this project didn't just reshape Americana, but how it actually lifted up marginalized pioneers who had been deliberately wiped from the record. I mean, it sparked a literal economic boom in Western wear.
Which is still crazy to think about.
Yeah, and it forced this massive, uncomfortable cultural conversation about who actually gets to claim ownership over American roots music.
Right. And to really understand Cowboy Carter, we can't just start in a recording studio in 2020. We have to go back to Houston, Texas. Because one of the biggest criticisms thrown at her in 2016 was this idea that she was just, playing dress up.
Like she was a pop star just trying on a cowboy hat for a quick trend.
Exactly. But she was born and raised in Houston. Her family attended the Houston Livestock Show and rodeo every single year. She was decked out in Western clothing as a kid. She listened to country and Zydeco music from an early age, which was heavily influenced by her paternal grandfather. She even performed at the rodeo 4 times early in her career.
So those roots, they run incredibly deep. I mean, Houston rodeo culture is not a casual aesthetic, It is a massive cultural institution.
Yeah, it's a way of life.
It is. So when she released that country song, Daddy Lessons, back in 2016, she wasn't appropriating a trend at all. She was pulling directly from her own lived experience and her childhood. And when that CMA performance triggered such a hostile response, it wasn't just a professional slight.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if you think about it, that 2016 rejection is like being locked out of your own childhood home. You have the keys, your name is on the mail, but the people standing on the porch are looking right at you and telling you that you just don't live there.
That's a great way to put it.
So how does someone with such deep, authentic Texas roots process being told she's basically a tourist in her own culture?
Well, she processes it by going to the library.
Literally?
Literally, yes.
Yes.
She didn't just fire off an angry tweet or put out a press release. She spent 5 years studying the archives. Because she realized that this exclusion wasn't just about Beyonce the pop star. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it mirrored a much larger historical erasure of Black pioneers in country music and Western culture as a whole.
Because historically, mainstream American media, Hollywood, television, even country music marketing, it's painted a very specific, very white picture of the American cowboy. You think of John Wayne, right?
Precisely. You think of John Wayne, Clint Eastwood.
Right.
But the reality she unearthed during her research, which, by the way, historians have long known, but pop culture just conveniently forgot, is that historically, 50% of all cowboys were Black, brown, or Native American.
50%. That's half of all cowboys.
Exactly. And she dug into the history of the soul circuit, which were Black rodeos formed by performers who were completely shut out of the mainstream white rodeos due to discrimination.
And the sources also note something really striking about the word cowboy itself. I think a lot of people listening, myself included, probably never really thought about the etymology of that word?
Oh, it's a crucial piece of the puzzle. She noted during her research that the word cowboy originally started as a derogatory term.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Enslaved and formerly enslaved people were given the absolute hardest, most dangerous jobs handling cattle and temperamental horses. And because of the deeply racist conventions of the time, black men were referred to as boys. So the men handling the cows were literally cowboys.
Wow. So the very name of the archetype, like the ultimate symbol of rugged American freedom, is actually rooted in slavery and marginalization.
Exactly. She realized how much of this foundational history was just missing from the popular narrative. And understanding that, it turns Cowboy Carter from a simple genre exercise into a massive act of historical reclamation.
But it's one thing to sit in a library and uncover centuries of erased history. It's entirely another to figure out how to translate that heavy academic research into a pop album that millions of people actually want to listen to, right?
Oh, for sure. That's the real challenge.
So how did she bring that into the studio? Because the sources say this project was staggering in scope. She recorded over 100 songs during the COVID-19 pandemic, which she described as her most creative period.
Yes, and keep in mind, this album is actually Act 2 of a planned trilogy.
Oh, right, the trilogy.
Yeah, it follows her 2022 house and disco album, Renaissance. And Renaissance celebrated the black progenitors of dance and club music. So there's an overarching structural mission here to explore and reclaim the black roots of different musical genres.
And she actually meant to release Cowboy Carter first, didn't she?
She did, yeah. But she swapped the releases because she felt people just really needed to dance during the pandemic.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so when she finally gets to work on Cowboy Carter, I'm looking at how she recorded it, and I'm honestly a bit surprised. She completely rejected modern digital shortcuts. No AI, no heavy digital filters. Instead, she used organic sound.
Completely organic, yeah.
We're talking the sound of wind, finger snaps, birds, and literally real chickens in the background. And she used old acoustic instruments. You've got Stevie Wonder playing the harmonica, Nile Rodgers on guitar, and Rhiannon Giddens on the banjo. But why avoid digital filters? Everyone uses them today. Is it just an aesthetic choice?
It's much more than an aesthetic choice. It's a mechanical argument about authenticity. Think about country music's core philosophy. It's often described as, 3 chords and the truth.
Right.
It prides itself on raw authenticity. But modern pop country coming out of Nashville today is heavily produced, highly digital, and very synthetic. By stripping away those synthetic layers and using raw acoustic instruments and even the ambient sounds of nature, she is essentially proving she can master the foundational mechanics of the genre better than the establishment that rejected her.
Wow. Okay, I love that. Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I'm looking at this list of musical ingredients, and I have to admit, it sounds like a chaotic mess on paper.
It does sound like a lot.
Right. The sources say she incorporated elements of Zydeco, folk, blues, opera, fado, and even Irish folk in there. I mean, fado is Portuguese melancholic folk music. Irish folk is, well, it's Irish. How does this not just sound like a wall of noise? And more importantly, how does she justify putting opera and Irish folk on a country album?
Because if you actually trace the genealogies of country music, it is a massive collision of cultures. Country music was born in the Appalachian Mountains, right?
Yeah.
People who settled there. Irish and Scottish immigrants bringing their folk traditions and fiddles, and who were they interacting with? Enslaved Africans who brought the banjo. The banjo is originally an African instrument.
Oh, right.
And Zydeco is a blend of Creole and Cajun music from Louisiana. By bringing in all these global cross-cultural elements, she's showing that Americana was never just one thing. It was always this gumbo of immigrant and indigenous sounds.
Okay, that makes sense historically. But from a listener's perspective, how do you wrangle all that eclectic energy, 100 songs, chickens, African banjos, and Irish fiddles into a cohesive album that actually flows when you press play?
That is where the album's framing device comes in, and it's brilliant. For you listening, imagine tuning an old AM dial in your car.
Like driving down a dusty highway?
Exactly. The entire album operates like a broadcast from a fictional Texas radio station called KNTRY Radio Texas. And the DJs running this station are actual country legends. You have Dolly Parton, Willie Nelson, and Linda Martell.
Now, Linda Martell is a name that might not be as universally recognized as Dolly or Willie, but the sources emphasize that she is incredibly important to this project.
Crucial. Linda Martell was the first black woman to achieve commercial success in the country genre. She played the Grand Ole Opry in 1969, but the country music industry effectively shut her out, refused to support her, and completely derailed her career.
Which perfectly mirrors the 2016 CMA rejection.
Exactly. It's the same cycle. So think about the mechanics of radio. Historically, radio DJs were the ultimate gatekeepers. They decided what was country and what wasn't. By creating this fictional radio station and placing a pioneer like Linda Martell in the DJ booth as the authoritative voice guiding the listener, Beyonce is retroactively giving her the platform and the power that the real-world industry denied her.
That is so smart.
It's a genius way to anchor a genre-bending album while correcting a historical wrong.
And it wasn't just about looking backward and honoring the legends, right? It was about passing the torch to the future. The collaborations on this album are just a wild bridge between absolute music royalty and rising stars.
It really spans generations.
Yeah, you have Paul McCartney playing guitar on a cover of the Beatles' Blackbird, and it's worth noting, Blackbird was originally written by McCartney, inspired by the struggles of the civil rights movement in the 60s, so its inclusion here is incredibly pointed.
Very intentional.
You have Miley Cyrus, you have Post Malone. But the real story is how she shines the spotlight on rising black country acts.
Right. Artists like Shaboozey, Tanner Adell, Brittany Spencer, Tier Kennedy, Raina Roberts, and Willie Jones, many of whom received their first ever chart entries specifically because they were featured on this album.
And the reaction to all of this was instantaneous. I mean, when the album dropped in March 2024, the numbers were staggering. It hit 76 million streams globally on its first day on Spotify alone. It broke streaming records across the board. But I have to bring up the Shaboozey effect because it's a fascinating subplot.
Oh, it really is.
Shaboozey features on the album, gets this massive wave of visibility, and then releases his own single, a bar song, Tipsy. And that song eventually knocks Beyonce's own lead single, Texas Hold'em, out of the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart, making it the first time in history that 2 black artists led that chart back-to-back.
It's an incredible milestone. Just huge.
It is. But let me push back a little here. Did she actually want to be knocked off the #1 spot? You'd think a pop star of her magnitude who just spent 5 years meticulously researching and crafting this massive project would want to hold that crown as long as humanly possible. Was getting dethroned really the plan?
Well, what's fascinating here is obviously every artist loves a #1 hit. But if we look at her stated mission and the architecture of the album, yes, this was exactly the goal.
Really?
Yeah. If she just wanted a crossover hit to pad her own resume, she would have only featured massive pop stars. But she specifically engineered a structural change in the industry by showcasing independent and rising black country artists. She wanted to build infrastructure so these artists could thrive on their own.
Ah, I see.
Shaboozey himself publicly thanked her for, quote, opening a door for us. She didn't just want a hit, she wanted a movement.
And it wasn't just the new artists benefiting. The sources show Linda Martell saw a 127,430% increase in streams of her music.
That number is almost hard to process.
It's massive.
It completely revived her catalog, leading to her 1969 breakthrough record, Color Him Father, being inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2025. That is tangible, legacy-altering impact for a woman who was ignored for 50 years.
Speaking of tangible impact, we have to talk about the real-world economic ripples of this album because it didn't just change music, it literally moved the stock market. We saw the rise of what the media called Cowboy Core.
A fashion trend, dude.
Beyonce simply names a track Levi's Jeans on the album, and Levi's stock jumps 20%. The brand reported that the album generated an additional $1.2 million for them just from online impressions alone.
And it wasn't just Levi's. Hat brands reported a massive 326% surge in sales of cowboy hats. Western wear became the defining global fashion trend of 2024. And what I find fascinating is how it bled into the tech sector, too.
Oh, the rideshare war. This is my favorite detail in the sources because it shows the sheer cultural gravity of the album. So Uber launches a promo code offering 16% off rides using the code 16carriages, a reference to one of her lead singles. So Lyft immediately counters. They offer 50% off with the code SpaghettiI24, referencing the track Spaghetti. Lyft even changed the little car icons on their app map to white horses, matching the album cover. It's petty corporate synergy, sure, but it proves that this country album had the whole world in a chokehold.
It permeated every layer of culture, and it dramatically shifted demographics globally. The sources show a 60% jump in country music listening in Sweden.
Sweden? That's wild.
Yeah, and 60% of British respondents in one survey said they started listening to country music because of Cowboy Carter. Millions of people streamed country for the very first time. She completely expanded the boundaries of who consumes this genre, bringing a massive global audience to a distinctly American art form.
So this brings us to the grand contradiction of Cowboy Carter. So what does this all mean when it comes to the country music institutions that originally locked her out in 2016? Because the album received universal acclaim, it broke records, it earned 11 Grammy nominations, making Beyonce the most nominated artist in history. She goes on to win Album of the Year and Best Country Album at the 2025 Grammys. But this is a big but. At the 2024 Country Music Association Awards, the CMAs, it received 0 nominations. Not one.
A complete and total shutout from the exact organization that sparked the album's creation in the first place.
Right. And it makes you wonder if the Grammys definitively say this is the best country album of the year, and it objectively grew the genre's global audience by millions, but the CMAs pretend it doesn't even exist. Who actually gets to define what Americana is? I keep going back to Beyonce's own quote before the album dropped. She said, "This ain't a country album. This is a Beyonce album."
This raises an important question about how gatekeeping functions, even in the face of overwhelming cultural and commercial success. Now, strictly looking at our sources, multiple publications attributed the CMA shutout to lingering conservatism and racism within the country music industry.
Right.
But we look at this from a narrative perspective. The CMA snub actually acts as the final perfect piece of evidence for her thesis.
How so?
Because the album was designed to expose historical erasure and institutional gatekeeping in country music. By deliberately ignoring a project of this magnitude, the institution essentially demonstrated the exact mechanism of exclusion that the album was critiquing.
Oh, wow. They proved her point.
They didn't just prove her point, they performed it live. The album sparked a necessary, if uncomfortable, discourse on the boundaries of country music and its roots within Black culture, forcing that conversation into the mainstream whether the institutions wanted it there or not.
It really brings us full circle back to that 2016 CMA stage. Cowboy Carter is essentially a masterclass in turning exclusion into expansion. When she was told she didn't belong in that space, she didn't just force the door open. To use an analogy, she didn't just break into the museum that rejected her. She built an entirely new, bigger museum.
I love that.
Yeah, she proved her ancestors actually carved the exhibits, and then she made the ignored artists the head curators.
That's exactly what the fictional radio station achieved. It's a phenomenal reframing of rejection. And for you listening, I think there's a profound takeaway here. If an artist can take a moment of deeply personal public rejection and instead of shrinking, use it to permanently alter global fashion, shift the stock market, and rewrite the history of an entire musical genre.
What boundaries in our own lives are we accepting as immovable rules when they're actually just waiting to be rewritten? That is exactly the question to leave on. Thanks for listening to People Pod. Keep tuning in for more stories worth knowing.